But, I'm really curious and really kind of throw out to the audience, to this webinar today, what are your questions and what are the tools that we can provide that either make these things, these steps easier to go through, or is there a gap? Is there something that we've not answered that we should answer? Either ask it using the chat question feature, directly connect, put up your hand to share your question, or contact Sarah, either via email or via phone. She loves to connect with people via phone, and I know personally she's just somebody who's a wonderful resource to those that work with her. Visit our website if you're curious to learn more. Our Twitter and Facebook channels. We also share a lot of information about other organizations that have great advice to offer. So we like to share information about the community. We really consider ourselves a leader, and we like to bring together the best practices and the best information and share them out with those that follow us. So, follow us on Twitter if that's something you enjoy doing, and definitely sign up for additional information. We're going to be sending a link in the post-webinar email, and we are going to send the folks that sign up for that link a full list of resources, so next steps that they can take, and that'll come through early next week, but we're obviously not going to send that unless somebody's interested. So we'd love for you to sign up for that if that's something that you think is valuable. Any questions out there? Sarah, I don't know if you've seen some pop up that you'd like to address before we close up.
We've seen some pop up, and I'm going to use the question. I see one from a man named Neil that I have come across quite a little bit, so I want to address that quickly. It says, do some companies choose not to contract with employees who are working through MBO? That's a really great question, and I'd love to say that it never happens, but sometimes we have companies for whatever reason that choose not to want to sign our contract, or we run into problems and we can't negotiate. If that is ever an issue, we have a workaround for that where consultants can, they can still maintain ownership of the contract, but still use MBO to do the invoicing and to do all the collections, billing, tax administration, all that stuff. That's not advised, and it's not ideal because it's, it puts more liability on the consultant, but it's not a deal breaker either. So that's a really great question. A lot of times people worry about that, and they worry about the control aspect too. What if I like MBO, but then I want to, for whatever reason, want to break off or go on my own? You have, it's employment at will for tax purposes, so you have the complete control to take us to all of your clients, to take us to just one, however you want to do it, whatever makes sense for your situation.
That's great, Sarah. I think that's a really interesting question and very relevant. And, the fact that I think on the flip side, Neil might actually enjoy hearing that there are a series of organizations that we already have MSAs with. And what an MSA is, for those that are not as familiar with the term, it's a Master Services Agreement, which means that we already have permission to act as the conduit. And these are, major Fortune 1000 organizations that use us as a sort of a 1099 or independent agency of record to help with managing the risk and compliance issues of working with somebody who's a business of one directly. And so to the flip, there's all these clients that are just ready and waiting for people that work through MBO because it just makes it easier for them to engage with somebody that they like, because the back office headache has been taken care of. There's no risk. And so we've taken away the risk both for the individual and the client. So I really think that's a fantastic benefit. And I believe that the flexibility that we offer is really strong, meaning the fact that you can use it for one and not another, so the consultant remains in control. I think that's really important.
Yes.
Well, what are some other questions before we finish up? I want to make sure we bring some other thoughts or dialogue into the picture.
Sure. Sandra has asked, do you have any suggestions or able to assist in business development, such as focused communications to potential clients? I'm probably going to let Asiya answer that just because of her background, but I will say we do have, I have a collateral and people talk to me. It's a great one-pager, just explains what MBO does, how we work with our clients, and just to piggyback on what Asiya said, the way that you introduce us to your client really depends on the situation. You can either put MBO on the back burner because the client knows you and your brand and who you are, and you bring MBO in at the end and say, when the contract comes up, you say, oh, hey, I have MBO, Sarah Condie will be contacting you. they handle all my back office stuff. So you can play us down. Or if you are going into those Fortune 1000 companies like Microsoft, Amazon, et cetera, you can say, hey, you know what? I already work with one of your approved vendors. And that just gets you in a lot quicker because that means they don't have to go through the very intense contingent worker enrollment process. So,
no, that's great. Well, to answer the question that came up around business development, I think there's a series of ways that we help there. What we do is, I think the first and most important way is that we create a relationship for every person that's a part of the business with a business manager who's your direct personal point of contact. And it's very, very unique. And they act really as a coach, a sounding board, an operating manager that helps you with all the mechanics of your business. And they can share any tools or education materials that we have that will guide you as to how to best position yourself as an independent. We have collateral that can be offered that, again, gives the client the comfort that you just know and understand things like liability insurance and how to operate, which really helps you to get in the door. And then we're actually, I'm giving you breaking news that's really not public as yet, but we're about to launch a wonderful platform that's a private platform for our members and clients only. And as I said, I mentioned we have many, many clients of a very significant size within our ecosystem, as well as hundreds and thousands of consultants at any given time using these types of private internal networks. And in those, there will be significant resources around answering and educating the question of what is the best way to develop your business. And privileged access, we'll be creating discounts for things like business lists, business tools, social outreach tools, better pricing for professional development, training resources that you might need. And this is going to build over time, but it's a very important way to successfully develop your business. Now, we're not going to know every possible client in every industry, so it's hard for us to consult on the specifics and say, we can't say, well, call so-and-so at this organization, because that would be outside of the appropriate step for us to take as your back office partner. But we could certainly give you the tips as to how somebody else has done that successfully. And I think that's pretty unique. So, that's how I would answer it.
Asiya, we have one last question. Do we have time for that?
I think for whoever would like to stay on, sure, let's do that.
Okay. It's from Russell, and he says, how does someone determine the line between presentations as marketing versus presentations as paid services? So speaker fees versus self-introduction to an audience. I can speak a little bit to that. When people are starting off, they often feel they want to not, they're still getting comfortable with what their rate is, and they want to put themselves in front of the client as someone who has, they don't want to sell themselves in with a low rate and then be tied to that, but they also, this is the most important time to build your business and to start referrals. So you don't want to come off with too high of a price. So sometimes it's fine to go pro bono on your first presentation or your first project, and then say, hey, here's my standard price, but for the first one, I'll do it, on the house, so you can kind of get a feel for my services. And that really is an investment in marketing, an investment in BD. That is really something that's important. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. What I would hesitate to do is to undersell yourself, to feel like, oh, this is my first client, or I really need to build business, so I'm going to lower my price and devalue myself. You don't want to do that. So if there's something that you want to provide and you want to do it to kind of build your business, then just make sure you're listing what your standard rates are, and let the client know that, you're kind of doing them a favor, and you want to get them to know you. That will build your reputation and help you get those referrals and projects down the line.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think that we will actually, for Russell's benefit, we'll be talking about the different ways to calculate a rate, which I think plays into this question. And there are a few ways. There's a cost-based way, there's sort of a market-based way, and then there's what you alluded to, Sarah, which is the true holy grail, which is value-based. And I think sometimes you do have to experiment with different engagements to understand and triangulate on what the right formula is for your specific field. So, some fields are more competitive than others. Some are more penetrated by independents than others. And so there's an education process between you and your client that occurs. But I love the idea of being upfront and saying, I'm willing to sort of put skin in the game, in business terms, to get business with you, but I'm sharing with you what I believe my value is and why I believe that brings a return. And I think people respect that. And, you know, the right way to do that is to offer essentially a teaser for your services by doing a wonderful job in creating referenceability, and then have the confidence to know and be persistent in your follow-up that when that skill set is needed, they'll think of you. So sometimes those investments take time to bear out, but they really can do that if you're committed to that career path. Well, this has been just, I think, really interesting, kind of wonderful dialogue for us to hear the questions from the audience. You know, we kind of crave that feedback and that understanding of what people are thinking about. And I know Sarah gets to experience that all the time. I'm a little bit further away from that as I'm looking at the macro picture. But again, just to finish up, please do contact us if you have questions, comments, good, bad, or ugly. We would love to hear them. We share our 1-800 number. You will receive a copy of this presentation, which will give you the other contact information. And if you decide to opt in to receive additional information, we'll be able to tell you about all of our educational webinars and articles that will be coming out over time around these critical topics that relate to independent consulting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Asiya.